Opposition United Labour Front Senator Dora Bridgemohan not only created parliamentary history when she was sworn in as a senator following the September 13, 1976 general elections in Trinidad and Tobago. She also won over many hearts in the Senate on that historic Tuesday afternoon when she rose to make her maiden speech. "Mr. President, fellow members of this august House," she began. And then her emotions got the better of her. She broke down crying. Senators, both government and opposition, as well as independent, spectators in the public gallery, all looked upon this small, soft-spoken woman who had left her humble job cutting sugar canes in the fields to assume a seat in the highest court in the land, and their hearts went out to her. Dora Bridgemohan, sugar worker, had now become Senator Dora Bridgemohan, lawmaker.
Yeah, she must have been overcome by the occasion and overcome by the thought that she was beginning to represent a new era where the Senate did not belong to those who would call anti a knife and fork.
Bastio Pandey was the leader of the ULF, the party that had won 10 of the 36 seats in those 1976 elections to form the opposition in Parliament. The PNM won 24 seats to be reinstated in government, and the remaining 2 seats, both in Tobago, went to the newly formed Democratic Action Congress led by A.N.R. Robinson. Mr. Pandey said when in 1972 he took over the leadership of the All Trinidad Sugar Estates and Factory Workers Trade Union, bargaining agent for the sugar workers employed by Carney Limited, he discovered that in the struggle of the sugar workers for better working conditions, women played the most important part.
So when I became opposition leader, I wanted to do 2 things. First of all, here I was trying to lift the feeling of self-worth of the people in the sugar industry. Secondly, I wanted to pay tribute to the women who led that struggle.
And so it was that out of 10 sugar workers who were interviewed, Dora Bridgemohan was selected as one of the 6 opposition senators that the ULF could constitutionally appoint to the upper house.
She was a cane cutter, lowest of the low, if I may call it, in the sugar industry, whose wages were the lowest that could possibly be, and so on. And I decided that what I will do is I will appoint Dora. She was a little articulate. Most of the people in the sugar industry were illiterate. They couldn't read and write. And among the women, she was, I think, one who could. And I decided that I'll appoint her as senator, as I say, to indicate my gratitude to the women of the sugar industry who had joined the struggle so hard for the improvement of the quality of their life. Secondly, that I would indicate to the sugar workers, who was the lowest of the low, that they too have a right to walk in the corridors of power.
Dora Bridgemohan was forced to leave elementary school at Standard 4 and spent 20 years cutting canes in the fields of the Waterloo section of Carney Limited. She was 40 years old when she was made a senator in 1976. She was also the mother of 9 and the grandmother of 2, and found the time to help her husband with a shop they owned at Bay Road in Orangefield, Couva, where the Bridgemohan family resided. At the time of her appointment to the Senate, Dora Bridgemohan earned a maximum of $120 per fortnight in the off-season planting sugar canes. During crop time, her cane cutting tasks would earn her $200 per fortnight. Now in a role that she could never have conceived in her wildest dreams, she was to be part of an opposition team of ULF senators comprising Lennox Spear, solicitor, Alan Alexander, barrister at law, Dr. George Sami, senior lecturer at the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine, George Weeks, President General of the Oilfields Workers Trade Union, and Joe Young, President General of the Transport and Industrial Workers Union. But Dora Bridgemohan was far from intimidated by her new and formidable circle of colleagues. In fact, she was as sought after by the media as any of the other 5 headlining opposition senators. In one newspaper interview, she was quoted as describing her senatorial appointment in this way: "I am sure it will be a good experience, an opportunity for the women in the sugarcane industry to keep their heads up." In another newspaper, she would call for more give and take in the home as well as equality of the sexes. She was quoted as saying, "I am not afraid to speak to people, but I never thought that my first call to politics would have been in the highest parliamentary chamber in the land." Another politician who played a significant part in the accession of Dora Bridgemohan to Parliament was Rafiq Shah. Now a newspaper columnist, Rafiq Shah alternated with Basir Pandey in the leadership of the ULF, and he also served as opposition leader in Parliament during a turbulent political period following the 1976 general elections. Mr. Shah points out that Dora Bridgemohan completely understood and appreciated her role as a senator.
And I must say, she was a woman who, in her own humble way, she made some significant contributions because she was able to bring to bear in the House the life of an ordinary worker, what kind of life that person lived. Because we could talk about it, we who were a little better off could talk about it, but she experienced it, and that is what she brought to bear in Parliament.
And according to Rafiq Shah, the appointment of Mrs. Bridgemohan to the Senate had absolutely nothing to do with tokenism.
We wanted the depth to come from them of how people actually lived at that level. Budram Jatan could relate. He came from way in the back of Pinal. So when Budram Jatan spoke of the conditions under which people survived in the cane farming industry and in rural Trinidad, he spoke from his heart, he spoke from his experiences. When Errol MacLeod spoke of the experiences of workers, he was then president of what was then the Texaco branch of the oil field workers. So he could talk about the worker on the ground, what were his experiences, her experiences. Similarly, Dora Bridgemohan, Orange Valley is a fishing village. She could have brought to us the problems facing the fisher folk. She brought the problems facing the workers, the sugar workers, the women in particular like herself. And it is one reason why we thought a woman would have been preferable, because there was an additional facet to it, that is the plight of the sugar worker, the female sugar worker, generally underpaid compared with her male counterpart, and experiencing having to be a housewife, having to probably have a husband as well, be a sugar worker, and to bring a family up in those conditions. We wanted that to come on the Parliament, the floor of the Parliament chamber, and she did a very good job doing that.
And Dora Bridgemohan did stand out prominently and positively on the opposition benches in the Senate. So much so that she was the only one of the 6 opposition senators appointed in 1976 who would go on to serve the full 5-year term in the upper house. Following her service in the Senate, Mrs. Bridgemohan returned to Orangefield, where she became something of a much sought-after community leader.